As many of you know, my fiance has been on vacation. Not away from me, but just some planned vacation she had. So as you can imagine, I've been missing her. I was just glancing up here at the choir, and one of the choir members was winking at me, and it just kind of bolstered my joy. As he left the dais up here, I come to find out he was winking at his wife. At any rate, joy abounds. Connections remind us of what is special to us. And truly, God has brought us together as the body of Christ. Let us pray. Holy and loving God, may the words of my mouth, the reflections and meditations of our hearts and minds honor you. You provide us with strength. You bring us comfort. Thanks be to God. Amen. The other day I was talking to a friend of mine who happens to be a pastor up in Alaska, and he was telling me how he and his wife have instilled this idea, this plan in their home that their kids have to take a leave of absence from their electronic devices throughout the day. He says most of the time they have their noses planted down playing some sort of game or watching some video or something or another that just seems to basically make the world pass them by. He tells them that when he's challenging them and he says, hey, you got to put that down now, they'll say to them and to he and his wife, just a minute, Dad. Just a minute, Mom. I want to finish this movie. I got to get to the next level of the game. Have you heard that, parents? Just a minute. Well, he went on to say and get a little bit more philosophical on this whole notion of what's available. He said, David, it's amazing. Our kids have this technology in their hands, and anymore today, they can just get whatever they want on demand. Any game, any movie, it's right there in that electronic device, and they can play basically whatever they want. He said, though, in the meantime, they're missing out on what's happening now. The world's passing them by. The whole world and their lives are going to pass them up because they're getting so wrapped up in these electronic devices that are before them now. Doug's comment is likened to that old phrase we used to hear when we would drive through small towns. You blink, you might miss it. Well, when it comes to these things now, if a kid is just so engrossed into it, if you blink, you might miss something out in life. Well, if you think about it, we can become so oversensitized when it comes to getting a person's attention. Just a minute. That we get no response at all. You see, we're listening to everything else that we're connected to, except we're not listening to the one thing that could make a world of a difference in our lives. Our souls. Our souls. We're waiting and we're listening. We become so accustomed to hearing the change hit the ground that we miss the voice of creation calling out to us. There once was a time when our souls were the barometer for which we measured many of the decisions we made from day to day. The soul was that place where the world seemed to come together and we could make those all most important decisions. And I'm not talking about, making some purchase or deciding what color the paint on the wall should be. Rather, there was a time, and I still believe there is a time, that we could turn and listen to our souls for direction in life. We could wait, and we could respond to what's being asked of us. Many times we call this listening to our soul, basically that we're just going off on our gut feelings. And our gut was that one place, that would guide us rather than our impulses or our rapid desires, helping us to understand what's important, those faithful choices and decisions we would make. Listening to our gut, listening to our soul is that tingly feeling, that quick urge, that little voice in our head and in our hearts that calls us to listen to our souls. Now, here's another piece of that. Have you ever run into something? I'm not talking about like hit something, but have you ever run into something or discovered something that maybe you shouldn't have seen or heard in the first place? Husbands, maybe you got a little bit too ambitious at anniversary time and started snooping around the house. Sometimes you discover something that you shouldn't have discovered or heard in the first place. There's that embarrassing moment in some cases. Well, this morning's passage from the book of Isaiah presents something that is seen and something that is unseen at the same time, but turns out to be rather significant. So significant that it could easily be missed if someone diverted their attention somewhere else, which easily then leads us to this. It leads us to observe that when it comes to looking for the unseen and the obvious things, we just might miss what's right in front of us. But we may discover if we do look, if we listen, if we see those signs and hear those voices and listen to our soul, we might discover an answer that lies within ourselves. That the gut feeling is really how we come to listen to things in the first place. Consider Isaiah. His vision of the throne room of God seems like something you would read or see out of a good old science fiction story or some sort of created imagination, but it also seems like one of those moments that he's run into something that he shouldn't have seen in the first place. It's almost like that scene in The Wizard of Oz, "Don't look behind the curtain." But he's seen what is behind the curtain in this case. He's at a loss for words, and he confesses that he's in over his head. I've seen something I probably shouldn't see. He says, "Woe is me." But he's caught up in the awe of, "Woe is me." He fears what he's seeing, and he tries to make some sense out of all that is happening before him. And in the midst of this, his sensories are on overdrive. You ever go down the strip in Las Vegas and for the first time, and it's just like everything is everywhere? Or walk down Main Street at Disneyland, you smell all these things, you see all the characters. There's this candy store at the mall now. It's called It's Sugar. You walk in there, it is sugar. It's everywhere. Your senses are inundated with all sorts of things. And in this case, here is Isaiah. He's having this vision, and his senses are on hyperdrive. He hears the angels calling out to one another, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord, God Almighty." He smells things that he hasn't smelled before. The bass is turned up on the speakers, and the pivots are even shaking in the house there, and they're thumping away. He even tastes, of all things, a live coal that the angel puts on his mouth to wash his sin away. It's a moment of listening. It's a moment of listening to the signs that are before him and to the voices that he hears. But it's deep within himself. It's deep within his soul that he begins to listen to the signs that are before him and the voices he hears. It's that big exclamation point that lets him know that something important is about to happen. It's a request and a call for him to be sent out with a message by God. Isaiah experiences forgiveness. This hot coal is brought and placed upon his lips. What in the world is this about? We don't do anything like that. Then we're reminded, oh, it's a metaphor. It's an image. It's to remind us about purification, that we can be made whole, that we're transformed. And Isaiah experiences this transforming experience when an exclamation point slaps him right on the lips. He is made into a new person. Like the fires that we experience or we hear about of Pentecost, that metaphor of God's Spirit coming upon us, the flaming embers of God's Spirit blesses Isaiah, extends to him God's forgiveness, and places a message within his mouths. And so deep within his soul as he begins to listen as God calls out to him, "Whom shall we send? Who will be our messenger to go out for us?" And he responds with an exclamation point. "Send me! Oh, me. It's like that guy in Mr. Carter, he's sitting there waving, "Pick me, pick me. Pick me." Something big is about to happen. You see, when we look upon the things that are holy, just as Isaiah's vision, it's like looking at something maybe we should have not seen. But then look out. Because the holy thing that we should not see actually might be the thing that's looking into us. You see, as we look for the holy things of God, God is also showing you what is holy inside of you. So what is your gut telling you? What does your soul tell you to do and to respond to when God calls out those holy things? Well, perhaps it goes something like this, and here's some examples. Maybe what we hear for once is that voice in us saying, well, this time maybe I'll trust myself to give someone or give that person who's holding up the sign on the corner, maybe I'll listen to that voice in my head and do something about that. Or maybe this is a time that I might pray for helping people who are in need in another country. Maybe it's time that I go and do something about it myself. Or we hear the voice that says, what sacrifices am I being asked to make to follow and to serve others in the name of God? Or maybe the voice is saying, this time I'll welcome that new person who seems to be sitting by themselves. Or maybe it's time that we start a new language ministry in our church. Maybe it's time for me to gather with a group of others and support one another in faith. Maybe I will just stop and say to Pastor Bob or David, why isn't our church doing this? And so on. Researchers have found that there are 5 basic gut feelings that we experience from time to time. It's like that coal that comes and touches our soul, and we are lit up like a light bulb with an epiphany of saying, this is true, this is what my gut is saying to me, and one of those is this. What we hear is the voice that says, something feels wrong in my body. I told you that last week. It's more than gas. You see, it's that voice that there's something that's giving that intuitive connection. One of those other experiences or voices that we'll hear in life is, I'm in danger. It's that voice that suggests that we have some sort of capacity to judge that something's wrong. The third voice that we might hear in our lives here is that voice that claims sympathy for other human people. And we say, I want to help. It's more than that feeling you get when you see the, adopt a dog or cat commercial or feed this kid for 25 cents a day. It's that sincere feeling that says, even I can make a difference. And then there's that another voice that reminds us that as we look at something, we hear these words, I know how to do this. I can do this. It's that voice that assures us that in trying to do something, we maybe just be talking too much about it in the first place, so go ahead and do it. And then there's that last voice we experience in life, the one that just says, this is it. This is it. It's that drive when you know it, when you see it. Isn't that right, guys? Isn't that right, Julie and Zach? You know it when you see it. Hallelujah. Thanks be to God. I'm in love. It's all of those things that remind us of how we are connected with things that are right and good, holy and just. It's something that's not just forced or made up. Consider our friend Isaiah. He experiences a bunch of sensations that are more than just a series of goosebumps. It's a sincere encounter with the living God. Imagine what it would be like to come here on any given Sunday, or any given day beyond Sunday, and you might imagine, or what would it might mean to walk into a space, maybe here, to sit down and to experience some sort of transforming experience in your life, to experience the holy presence of God. I want to tell you a story about some ducks. You heard me, ducks. Soren Kierkegaard was a theologian and a philosopher. He tells a parable of a community of ducks that every Sunday they would waddle off and go to duck church, of all places. And while at duck church, ducks can go to church, can't they? They would sit there and the duck preacher would preach eloquently of how God had given the ducks wings to fly. And with these wings, there was nowhere that they couldn't go, that they could even fly up into the hands of God. There is nothing these ducks could not accomplish. Squawks of amens could be heard throughout the duck church as the duck congregation affirmed with their amens. Quack, 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 hallelujah. And for the bald-headed ducks in the congregations, quackmen! I've got time. Soren Kierkegaard concludes that story that as the ducks left church after the end of the service, they left like any other duck would on any given Sunday, commenting on how wonderful and uplifting the message was. They were high-winging the pastor as they left the church that day, and quack, 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 wonderful, quack. Does this parable sound familiar? Does this sound a little bit too close to home? Too often, us worshipers waddle away from worship just as we had waddled in, unchallenged, unchanged. Perhaps it's because we are creatures of habit. Week after week, congregants come and sit in the same place. Now, I'm not talking about the choir. But we come and sit in the same place. We follow the same order of service that we know by heart. We listen to the sermon, which we assume is intended primarily for someone else. And to continue this diatribe, our noses are buried into something else, whether they be the bulletin or our thoughts or the agenda of the week. Something that keeps us away from experiencing what is before us and living now! Explanation point. Occasionally, though, and hopefully more often, something happens. Call it a coincidence, call it some sort of spontaneous serendipity. It's something unplanned, unrehearsed, uncontrollable. In the midst of the church service, worship happens. Something harmonically connects us with the holy. Someone's eyes are open to a deeper awareness of the grandeur of God by the majesty of the music, and a new commitment is made. Someone recognizes that their life story somehow is depicted in the Scriptures, and a new believer is born. Maybe someone hears in the sermon, as if for the first time, the forgiving love of Jesus, and a new hope is given birth. We may wonder why such things occur there, but not there, and in her, and not in him. But the experiences have taught us that these events can't be explained, only described. Therefore, each week as we gather, we come to describe what others have experienced so that we too might become a part of that experience. As Christians, we experience the Jesus event in those phrases: Christ has died, Christ is risen, Christ comes again, because it is the one who makes us one with God, one with each other, and one in ministry before the world. We hear a voice call out, "Whom shall I send?" Whom? Whom shall we send? Send I? Period. Send I? Question mark. Send me. Send me. See, we are never too old, we are never too young, never too overexperienced or underexperienced, never in that situation that there's not enough to respond with that voice affirming that call that is within our souls. So may we listen. May we listen to the signs that are before us. May we listen to the voice that speaks to us. May we listen to the voice calling out in response in our souls. Here I am. Send me. Let the church sing. Amen. Amen. Amen.